What if the prices at your local supermarket dropped overnight? How would your job opportunities change if emerging economies took control of global trade? Could a new global alliance reshape your everyday life? Have you ever wondered how global economic power influences your daily expenses, job security, or even the quality of public services? Today, we're exploring a groundbreaking shift in international economics, the dramatic expansion of the BRICS bloc. Originally formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS is now attracting interest from 23 new countries. What does this mean for the future of global trade and for you, the everyday consumer? Stay tuned as we break down how this bold move could lead to lower tariffs, more competitive prices, and a new economic balance that might just transform your world. Chapter 1. The evolution of BRICS. BRICS started as a concept in the early 2000s, a grouping of emerging economies poised to challenge the Western financial order. Initially, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa united mainly for economic growth. Fast forward to early 2025, and the alliance has morphed into a major geopolitical force, now attracting interest from 30 additional countries. With BRICS now representing over half of the world's population and a significant share of global GDP, this evolution signals a shift toward a more multipolar world. This evolution isn't just for policymakers. For the average person, a stronger BRICS means that countries once on the sidelines are gaining influence. This can translate into more competitive prices for goods imported from emerging markets and potentially more jobs in sectors like manufacturing and technology as these economies grow. For instance, consumers in countries like Nigeria or Indonesia might see better access to products and services, along with more stable local prices as these nations leverage their new global influence. Chapter 2. The strategic significance of new members. Zooming in on key new members. Nigeria and Indonesia exemplify how BRICS expansion isn't merely about increasing numbers, it's about strategic geographic and resource advantages. Nigeria, with its vast natural resources and over 200 million people, boosts the bloc's influence in Africa. Indonesia, a major trade hub in Southeast Asia with a booming economy and 280 million people, helps extend BRICS's reach into a critical region for global commerce. Their inclusion reshapes the economic mix and gives the bloc more negotiating power in international trade. For everyday citizens, this shift can lead to improved infrastructure, better public services, and lower import costs. In Nigeria, for example, enhanced participation in global trade could spur investments in roads, schools, and hospitals. In Indonesia, consumers might enjoy more competitive pricing on electronics or clothing as the nation harnesses its strategic position. Small business owners may find new export opportunities, while workers could see job growth spurred by increased international investment. Chapter 3. The 0% Tariff Initiative and Economic Integration. One of the most transformative policies emerging from the expanded BRICS is the 0% Tariff Initiative. By eliminating tariffs among member nations, BRICS aims to create a frictionless trading environment. This move lowers transaction costs, boosts intra-block trade, and makes goods and services more affordable. When countries trade using local currencies, it reduces exchange rate risks and fortifies economic independence. Imagine a scenario where your local supermarket prices fall because imported goods no longer carry hefty tariff charges. Shoppers might see lower prices on everyday items like electronics, food, and clothing. In local markets, businesses could expand their offerings without the burden of extra costs, ultimately raising the standard of living. For families, this means more disposable income and a better quality of life as the economy becomes more integrated and resilient. Chapter 4. Redefining global trade and monetary policy. Beyond trade, BRICS is working hard to reshape the monetary system. For decades, the US dollar has dominated global finance, granting the United States significant influence over international trade and sanctions. BRICS, however, is advocating for the use of local currencies, which could lead to de-dollarization, a shift that promises more stability and fairness in global financial transactions. The establishment of new financial institutions, like the New Development Bank, further reinforces this alternative financial framework. For everyday people, de-dollarization could mean that local currencies become more stable and better reflect domestic economic conditions. This change might reduce the cost of imported goods and lower inflation in countries that previously struggled with volatile exchange rates. In practical terms, families may spend less on everyday expenses and enjoy more predictable prices at markets and stores. Moreover, a more balanced monetary policy can foster job creation and local investment, leading to greater economic security for citizens. Chapter 5. Geopolitical Ramifications. BRICS expansion isn't only about economics, it's also a bold geopolitical statement. A larger BRICS block challenges traditional Western institutions like the G7 and the IMF by redistributing global power. With a united front, BRICS can potentially counterbalance U.S. influence in international policy. However, internal differences, such as varying political systems and economic priorities, mean that consensus isn't always easy to reach. Leaders must navigate these complexities while maintaining unity. Geopolitical shifts can directly affect everyday life. For instance, if BRICS successfully challenges Western dominance, developing nations might secure more favorable trade deals and foreign investment. This can result in better infrastructure, improved healthcare, and enhanced education systems. Conversely, geopolitical tensions could lead to temporary market volatility, affecting employment and the price of consumer goods. For many citizens, these global dynamics can influence the availability of imported products, energy prices, and even job security in industries sensitive to international trade policies. Chapter 6. The road ahead. Opportunities and obstacles. Looking to the future, BRICS faces both significant opportunities and daunting obstacles. On the one hand, increased bargaining power, diversified economies, and regional integration present promising avenues for growth. On the other hand, economic disparities, political divergences, and implementation challenges could slow progress. How effectively BRICS manages these internal challenges will determine its long-term success in reshaping global finance. For the average person, these opportunities and challenges will trickle down to daily life in tangible ways. Greater economic integration could lead to more robust job markets and increased local investments in technology and infrastructure. However, if internal divisions lead to policy gridlock, it might result in economic uncertainty affecting everything from home mortgage rates to the price of consumer goods. In emerging economies, overcoming these obstacles could mean more stable employment and higher standards of living. Failing to do so might lead to higher inflation and slower growth, impacting everyday budgets and quality of life. Chapter 7. Analyzing the data and future projections. Let's examine the data behind these trends. Emerging markets now account for nearly 65% of global growth, and many analysts forecast that BRICS could eventually control a significant share of the global GDP. Indicators such as rising intra-block trade volumes, increased local currency usage, and higher central bank gold reserves all point toward a future where the traditional dollar-dominated financial order is gradually shifting. However, while the data shows diversification is underway, many experts believe that any significant erosion of the dollar's role will occur over decades, not overnight. What does this mean for you? Over time, as these trends solidify, you may experience a more resilient economy in your own country. For example, improved monetary policies could lead to a stable inflation rate and predictable prices at the pump and in grocery stores. If local currencies become stronger and more trusted, people might face fewer shocks from global economic turbulence. In addition, long-term investments in infrastructure and technology could create new jobs and boost the quality of public services, from better roads and hospitals to enhanced digital connectivity in rural areas. In summary, the expansion of BRICS marks a transformative shift in global economic and geopolitical power. By integrating new members, implementing zero-tariff policies, and pushing for de-dollarization, BRICS is challenging the long-established Western dominance of global finance. While there are significant opportunities for growth, there are also formidable obstacles that the bloc must overcome. Crucially, these global changes are not abstract, they have a real, direct impact on everyday life. Whether it's lower prices, more stable jobs, or better public services, the ripple effects of BRICS' evolution will be felt by people around the world. We'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you think these global shifts will affect your daily life? Drop your comments below and join the conversation. What if I told you that a single move from Canada could bring the world's most powerful tech company to its knees? No, this isn't a movie plot, this is happening right now. Brace yourself, because the stakes are higher than you think. For decades, the US has dominated the global stage, making the rules of trade and economics. But what happens when one country finally says, enough is enough? In an unexpected move, Canada has shaken the foundations of global trade, sending shockwaves all the way to Silicon Valley. This video will dive into how a simple toll on US trucks passing through British Columbia set off a chain reaction, one that's cost the US tech industry hundreds of billions. Stick around to find out why Donald Trump never saw this coming, and how it could change everything we know about international trade. For decades, Canada has played the role of the quiet and diplomatic neighbor, respecting trade agreements and maintaining good relations with its southern neighbor, the United States. But the patience of this neighbor ran out when Donald Trump escalated the trade war, slapping tariffs on Canadian goods and threatening its industries. It wasn't just about trade, it was about sovereignty. Many Canadians felt that Trump was trying to erode their country's independence, and this wasn't something they were willing to let slide. Then British Columbia made a bold move under the leadership of Premier David Eby, signaling to the world that Canada wasn't just going to sit back and take these hits anymore. He delivered a speech that would go down in history. Eby didn't just announce tolls on U.S. freight trucks passing through British Columbia. He declared defiance. He said, "We are doing all we can to detach from the U.S., to move to other markets, and to break free from the whims of one person in the White House." It was more than just symbolic. Eby's move was calculated. It was a direct response to the tariffs imposed by Trump's administration on Canadian goods like aluminum and steel, industries that were vital to Canada's economy. The U.S. claimed these tariffs were in place to protect American jobs, but to Ottawa, they felt like an economic chokehold designed to make Canada dependent on American manufacturing. The U.S. wasn't the only target. British Columbia wasn't merely defending trade, it was setting the stage for a complete overhaul of Canada's economic strategy. David Eby's first step was strategic tolls on U.S. freight trucks. These trucks used British Columbia as a transit corridor to Alaska, saving time and money. By imposing fees on these shipments, Eby wasn't just raising revenue, he was applying pressure on the U.S. to show that Canada wasn't afraid to retaliate. This toll wasn't just about money, it was about sending a message. If the U.S. wants to play hardball, Canada can do the same. At the same time, British Columbia was putting in motion a much bigger plan, an economic resilience strategy aimed at reducing reliance on U.S. trade. The government introduced incentives for Canadian businesses to prioritize interprovincial trade instead of relying on American imports and exports. This wasn't just a temporary retaliation, it was a long-term structural shift to shield Canada from the unpredictability of American tariffs. But there was more to it. British Columbia also began to implement low-carbon fuel mandates that would require domestic sourcing of fuel, cutting out American suppliers almost entirely. This policy wasn't just about creating a sustainable future for Canada, it was a move to regain control over its economic destiny. And as these changes were taking place, the world was beginning to pay attention. While Canada was fortifying its economy, something much bigger was unfolding, a chain reaction triggered by uncertainty. Investors hate uncertainty, and Trump's trade war created plenty of it. His unpredictability one day imposing tariffs, the next threatening sanctions was throwing the financial world into chaos. But one sector was feeling the heat more than others: technology. For years, Silicon Valley thrived on a delicate balance of global supply chains. Companies like NVIDIA relied on international cooperation, sourcing materials from countries like China and Canada. But Trump's push for economic nationalism was threatening that system. In particular, NVIDIA, the world's biggest AI chipmaker, was about to lose more than just market share. It was about to lose $1 trillion. NVIDIA's downfall was set into motion by Trump's chip export restrictions aimed at slowing down China's AI development. With the stroke of a pen, the U.S. tightened the screws on China's access to advanced AI semiconductors, blocking companies like NVIDIA from selling their most powerful chips to Beijing. The goal was simple: stop China's AI progress. But the result was far from what the Trump administration expected. Instead of crippling China, the sanctions backfired, causing massive uncertainty in the tech sector. Investors began to panic as the U.S. was inadvertently cutting off not just China, but its own tech companies' access to critical markets and materials. The fear was real. If the U.S. was willing to cut off chip sales to China, what would stop China from cutting off the raw materials needed for these chips? NVIDIA was in trouble. The company, once valued at a staggering $3.66 trillion, began to plummet. On January 27th, NVIDIA lost $589 billion in a single day, a loss that shocked the entire tech world. But that wasn't the end. Over the next 2 months, NVIDIA's market value continued to slide, dropping by $1 trillion See dollars. As Nvidia's stock tanked, it wasn't just a